This week's theme on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast is, are the new Bitcoin ETFs a good investment? If you've been a listener of the podcast for some time, you may have heard me talk about Bitcoin and more broadly cryptocurrencies previously on the podcast. 2 years ago, in June of 2022, I talked about crypto in a weekly theme called Investments I Hate. Do I still hate Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies? Well, let's revisit what I had to say on this topic in June of 2022. By the way, you'll hear that I mentioned bad actors and manipulation in the crypto markets. This podcast episode aired several months prior to the total collapse of FTX and the debacle with Sam Bankman-Fried. It wasn't a secret that these types of things could happen. There was a lot of manipulation, a lot of fraud going on, and we've seen that play out since this original episode aired. The other thing I want to point out that's interesting about this is that, a lot of people, especially pundits on TV, they'll make predictions. Politicians do this too. They change, they move with the wind, and then no one ever revisits their original recommendations. And so what I will say, if you go back to June of 2022, when I was really down on Bitcoin, it's not because I thought that the price would completely collapse and it would go to zero. That certainly is and was possible. And if you look at the crazy price swings in Bitcoin, I had a pretty ugly year overall in 2022, but it's come back. And if you had ignored my advice and bought Bitcoin in June of 2022, you would have made a pretty decent return on your money. So I'm not saying that you can't make money in Bitcoin, but you may not want to invest. And so here's why. So crypto made it onto my hated list of investments for many reasons. So here's exactly what I said back in June of 2022. Bitcoin, crypto, it's difficult to understand. Cryptocurrency is defined as a digital currency in which transactions are verified and records maintained by a decentralized system using cryptography rather than by a centralized authority. So even the definition of a cryptocurrency, which is kind of the broad umbrella that Bitcoin falls under, even the definition is very confusing. Then you do a little bit more research and you go down this rabbit hole of things like blockchain, digital wallets, mining coins, and time to move on. Warren Buffett's famous investing advice is to only invest in what you can understand. This is great advice. It's perennial advice. I do think, though, that the vast majority of people who have and are currently invested in crypto, they don't really understand what they're investing in. They're just jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon because they don't want to miss out. The idea that they could double their money in a matter of days, weeks, and months is what's attracting people into this highly speculative investment. I'm going to continue to sit this one out. That's exactly what I said in June of 2022. It's exactly what I believe today. And I'll obviously get into that in more detail further on in the week. I want to wait and see what happens with crypto before I consider it as a legitimate investment option. You don't want to just jump into something because of the prospect that you could make money in it. And Bitcoin has been touted as a replacement for gold or even for the dollar as the world's reserve currency. It simply has a dismal track record as a reliable store of value. And you need that in order to replace something like the dollar, in which the vast majority of transactions that happen around the world, and the reason why we have the global economy that functions as smoothly as it does, is because the dollar, among other factors, is a very reliable store of value. The value of the dollar isn't going to crater or go to the moon overnight. It doesn't change that much. It changes by minuscule amounts and very slowly over time. So you need it to be stable. You have to have it hold that store of value. And so Bitcoin obviously doesn't, because it is much too volatile to be a reliable replacement for any type of fiat currency like the dollar or gold or anything else for that matter. And it's certainly not something that you would want to invest in as a quote investment. So it is mostly speculation, and it has been, and that may change over time. And I love this quote from NYU professor of economics, Nouriel Roubini. He cautioned investors, this is back in 2022, not to view cryptocurrency as an effective hedge against inflation. He said, in the case of Bitcoin or any other essentially crypto coin asset, the basis for the fundamental value is not there. It's vaporware. It's not backed by anything. They're not currencies. They're not even assets. They're highly volatile. They're speculative, and they're subject to manipulation of one sort or another. If you want to just boil down everything that I'm going to say this week, you could sum it up in that quote right there. There are a lot of drawbacks, and the only positive reason why you would want to invest in Bitcoin is because for the chance that you can make a lot of money. Because yes, people have made a lot of money, but you can also lose a lot, especially if you time it poorly. So have I changed my opinion on Bitcoin? No. I mean, it's basically what it was back in 2022. Everything that I just talked about was exactly what I talked about back then. And nothing has really changed with the reasons that I took a pass on Bitcoin in 2022. It still is highly volatile. You time it wrong, you could lose 90% of your money that you invested in Bitcoin. It's still subject to manipulation. Fraud is still a problem. Most people investing in Bitcoin today, they do not understand what they're actually investing in. And they're confusing gambling, which is what speculation is in these types of markets like Bitcoin. They're confusing this gambling, trying to get rich quick with thinking that they're investing. I use air quotes, they're investing in Bitcoin. But it's basically just speculation. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.